Welcome to another episode of Willing to Talk About It. I am your host, D. Harmon. In this conversation, Doc Williams shares his journey from growing up with learning challenges to becoming a successful entrepreneur of multiple businesses. A former beat writer for ESPN and the WNBA, Doc discusses his childhood dreams of wanting to be a toy photographer and his passion for writing and storytelling at an early age. Doc also talks about the challenges he faced in school and how he overcame them with the support of his parents. He shares his experiences in the fitness industry, opening a CrossFit gym at a young age, then transitioning to writing for ESPN. Doc discusses the growth of women's sports and his coverage of the WNBA. In this part of the conversation, Doc discusses the impact of NIL deals in college sports and the financial opportunities they provide for athletes. He also shares his transition from ESPN to Via Media and his experience that he gained in ghostwriting and marketing. Doc explains the rise of no-code tools and the importance of authenticity in media. Doc emphasizes the value of systems and processes in business and the limitations of relying solely on social media marketing. Finally, he highlights the potential of local businesses and niche markets for success. In this conversation, Doc discusses the importance of app development and the need for businesses to determine if an app is necessary. He emphasizes the value of identifying pain points and finding solutions that meet customers' needs. Doc also shares his passion for learning and the power of caring for others. He provides insight into upcoming projects, including the creation of new YouTube channels and micro documentaries, one of which I've had the limited exclusive rights to view. Doc currently has over 440 YouTube videos and over 2 million views of those videos. He knows what he is talking about. If you're interested in learning how to build an app, scaling your business, or looking for new side hustles, ideas, this is the right episode, and I'm talking to the right guy for you to learn from. I'm going to go ahead and get out the way. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Hit the notification bell so you can get updates on when new shows come out. We will, I promise you, continue to bring you great special guests like Doc Williams. Let's go.
Yeah.
Thank you, Doc, for coming on. Really appreciate it, man. And I just can't tell you, I went to a 70th birthday party this weekend and here in Charlotte, North Carolina. And the lady that turned 70, I consider her to be like a aunt, close family member. But her kids invited some people that she didn't know were coming. It wasn't a surprise birthday party, but she did invite some people that the recipient didn't know was coming. And when she walked in the room and saw her sisters that had traveled from California that she hadn't seen in so long, it brought tears to her eyes, man. And it just goes to show, like, I don't take invitations for granted. I really don't. So I appreciate that you also don't take the invitation for granted, man. And so many of my guests, they don't. And I really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. It really is humbling.
I appreciate
But
it. Well, no, no. Well, thank you for telling me that story, and I do what I can, man. Honestly,
yeah,
when you hit me up, I was like, yeah, this just feels right. Let's do it. We got to
let's
do
do it.
this. So,
Let's do it.
thank you.
But Doc, you're an educator with a specialty in business development, right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
And
sir.
you help new brands and existing ones to grow their business. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. And you've done some work with ESPN, NBA Summer League, Via Media, and also AppSumo, among
Yep.
other companies here and there. Okay. Well, we're gonna unpack that, Doc. But before we do, let me start off by asking you where you originally from.
Okay. Where am I originally from? So I was born in Massachusetts, so not too far from Boston.
Uh-huh.
So I was born there. I said I was born and raised, being illegally. I mean, technically that's true. I was born and raised into my mom's arms, and then we moved to Maryland, like when I was like 8 weeks old. So I'm pretty much always been around the DMV and outside of the burbs of DC most of my life.
Okay. Is that I know I had a friend down there in Prince George County. Is that somewhere?
PG,
Yeah.
PG.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah, good friend of mine. But what was it like growing up there, Doc?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, I don't know. It was, I'll say this. It depends on what you look at because I feel like it's the burbs. Some people are like, oh, you're most in DC. It's about like 17 miles from DC. So it was really the burbs. I was in DC a lot of the time. It was a lot of, I didn't understand that how diverse it was, I guess, at the time until I left. And then I was like, oh, I guess that is unique.
Right.
I never really thought anything of it. um, it was an interesting. It was pretty much like low key. I mean,
Uh-huh.
this is a side note. Like, I ended up working at ESPN. If anyone knows who like SVP is, Scott Van Pelt, one of their main anchors. He was an alumni of my high school. So when
Okay.
I graduated, he gave that speech, and I always remember that speech. And so it was. I feel like it was pretty normal, but I was able to do a lot of amazing things because of my parents.
Okay. So they were very instrumental in your life.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. I mean, they pretty much. I'll put it this way: I'm the youngest of three, so I have two older sisters. My oldest, so I have an older sister that's 9 years older than me, another one that's pretty much 6 years older than me. But my parents were basically like, whatever you want to try out, they support. Yeah, I mean, so I can't ask anything more than that. So I did some crazy, wacky things. So
Right.
they always
Right.
supported me.
So the funny thing is, I know you mentioned you had some siblings and you were the youngest. What did you want to be growing up? I mean, the sky's the limit. Your imagination wasn't being intercepted or interrupted. So, do you remember anything that you might wanted to be when you were growing up?
Okay, so there's two things that I think about. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I think I've always wanted to be in some kind of business. It's very obscure, kind of the businesses, I guess. So one is I always thought I wanted to open up. This is going to date me, but I always wanted to open up a newsstand in Chicago. I just thought it was that's what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted to do. I was going to open up a newsstand in Chicago. I thought I was going to be doing that. I had some random things. I loved comic books growing up, and I was always into business. And also, I was into animation. I was into, just recording. But at the time, I mean, so I was born in '87. In the early '90s, like I didn't have money for a video camera, so the next best thing to me was like photography. And I was
Hmm.
obsessed with toys, so I wanted to be a toy photographer. I have this book, like in second grade. You know, some people are like, oh, they want to be an astronaut, a fireman.
Right.
And when I was like 30, my wife found this old book that I wrote in second grade, and it just
Wow.
says that he wants to be a toy photographer. And like, yeah, that's what I used to tell people.
Wow. You remind me going back to the toys. I remember Sears and Roebuck. I'm not sure if they had it down there, but I'm sure they did. And they would come out with this big, thick, like phone book thick catalog around that time, and I would just sit there thumbing through, making my toy list. So a photographer must have taken those pictures, though.
Yeah, exactly,
That
exactly.
wow, that's weird. That's weird. Okay. I mean, I never thought about toy photography, but then it brings me back to my Sears catalog book where I used to make these long lists of toys I wanted, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, and I think it was just imagination. I just always remember playing with toys and just the imagination, just building those sets. I think that's pretty much what it was.
Mhm.
But thinking back, I think I don't know. I mean, I have severe dyslexia. I was just always doing random things, I think. Just because I couldn't read, I was visually anything. That's why I love comic books because I could understand a story without reading. I was really big on that. So when I think about like toys and I mean this is real random, but one of my favorite movies, one of my favorite movies. So I'm a huge Star Wars fan,
Oh,
but
my brother would love this.
see and there was this thing, and I don't know, this is my parents, and again, they wouldn't buy me the trilogy. They wouldn't buy me the original one, like Star Wars, Empire and Return. They only let me buy two. They said you can only buy two of the movies.
Okay.
And there's a reason I say this because I got Empire Strikes Back, but there is this really obscure. It was on VHS. It was called "To Star Wars to Jedi," and it was the making of how they did the trilogy. And I loved the behind the scenes. I loved seeing how things were made. I loved just seeing the special effects. I've watched that special more than I've seen the movie. I can tell you, I've seen that more than 400 times. I still
Yeah.
watch it because it's one of my favorite things.
Man.
So,
Yeah.
moving on, like all throughout my life, I've just always loved seeing how it was made, how everything was put together, and
Yeah.
behind the scenes doing things with cameras. Like that's what I wanted.
Right. Right. That creativity. That creativity.
Exactly.
Uh, you
Exactly.
mentioned some learning challenges. How was it? How were you in school?
Oh, I was terrible. I was
Yeah.
terrible. So, in elementary school, so again, I have severe dyslexia. I didn't really start reading very well until later, fourth or fifth grade. I mean, to be honest, I was in a resource class, so I guess they would say like a special class, whatever, all the way through elementary school. I had a really, really strong lisp. I had all these things. I had a high pitched voice. So I was in speech class most of my elementary school life.
Mhm.
And I hated school. I hated school. And so, elementary school, I had a great resource teacher. I love her. But in general, I never liked school because it was never anything I was interested in. They never talked to me the way I wanted to be talked to.
Right.
So I pretty much struggled all the way to college. I would skip as much. I would try everything possible not to go to public school.
Wow.
Everything possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's great. I mean, you do mention that you had that teacher there that gave you that a little support, and it sounds like your parents obviously they were very supportive. That's
Oh yeah,
great.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean that's what it takes, though. Doc. So many times we hear about school being that breaking point, or it could be the making point for so many kids, and to set them on that path. And especially, I hear you say you went on to go to college. I mean, it's not like after those 12 years you say, you know what, finally enough is enough. You still took on another 2 to 4 or however long you went. How
Yeah,
was
I
that?
mean, it was good. College was good, but I mean, so this is the thing. My parents are like, you're gonna have to get a skill. I could have gone to tech school. They're basically like, we'll help you. We'll fund you for one shot. Basically, you can do something, but like whatever cert that you want to go for, we'll get you there pretty much.
Right.
So right out of high school, 2 weeks into summer vacation of high school, I was already in community college, so I went to school for massage therapy, and pretty much, I mean, if I'm thinking back, I'll never forget. I mean, and again, because I had different problems, I was always, my back was jacked up when I was younger. So I was in a chiropractor by the time I was like in sixth grade. So that's like 12, 11 or 12. I had a moderate curvature. So I had scoliosis and I was having just terrible pain. You already know. You,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
already know.
I still have scoliosis.
You know it. And,
Mild
and so I,
scoliosis. That's what they say, right?
Mm-hmm. And so, I was at the chiropractor, and one of the women there, I'll never forget, Sandy. She was like, maybe you should go into massage therapy. You always love talking about just, how people feel better. I guess maybe my personality. She's like, you should go into massage therapy. So from seventh grade, I was telling people, I'm like, yeah, when I get out of high school, I'm going to be a massage therapist. And, people are like, whatever. And so right out of high school, 2 weeks later, I was already in school for massage therapy.
Wow. Wow, that's great. That's great. At least you were pursuing what you wanted to do. So many people come out of school. It sounds like me. I mean, as soon as I got out, I kind of got right into the business that I was set on. But I also had some learning disabilities, so I sympathize with you. I couldn't see. I didn't want to sit in the front of the class. I wanted to sit in the back, but I couldn't see the board. So they were like, "Well, he's not doing good on these grades, but maybe he can't see." They figured out he can't see. So, but I was turning my D's into B's and my B's into D's and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Yep.
So I get it. So I get it. So, but we got through, and now we're here. And now we're here. So how did that? Now you went through school for massage therapy. Did you finish? Did you ever work in that field?
Yeah, so I worked in the field, but this was pretty much I got out around like 2008, and that was the first like crisis in the economy like when I
Yeah.
got out.
Tell me about it.
So that happened, and my parents were like, "Listen, that's basically everyone was cutting back on everything, right? The
Mm.
housing bubble, all this stuff was happening, and you could get some jobs, but it just wasn't plentiful. Now, outside the district in DC, like you could still make it, but my parents are like, listen, you're gonna have to think about this like a little bit a little bit harder, right? You need to think about this. So at that time, I went back to school for physical therapy assistant. The reason I
Okay.
did it was I was like, I'm not staying in for a master's or a doctor. I'm not staying in that long. What's the least amount of school to do the thing I want to do?
Right.
And so there it was physical therapy assistant. And so I got my license for massage therapy. I still have it. And then I went into PTA. I finished that program, and then I got my license for that too.
Okay. 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 How was that? Did you ever get a chance to work in that field?
Yeah, yeah. So I worked in that field for about 7 or 8 years. You know,
Oh
I
wow.
went out of this. I went out of that thinking I was always going to be like in sports medicine. I was going to work with athletes, and I got a chance to work with a few athletes in college. But I realized pretty early on, most college students that are athletes, they're just jerks. Like they're terrible because
Right.
they already think that they've made it. Like you ain't in the NBA, you ain't like
Yeah.
big time yet, but they're
Yeah.
already they can barely like you're just part of their entourage. And I was
Right.
just like, you're the one with the blown out ACL. You're the one with like the labrum tear. Like I don't like I'm not needing it right here. So that really turned. I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this. Like I was into fitness. I was really into all those things, but I was like, nah, I'm not really feeling that. And then my wife lived out the area, like about an hour and a half, and only thing around was a sniff called so it's a skilled nursing facility. So I went from athletes to geriatrics.
Oh wow.
And that was, I mean, that taught me a lot. That taught me a lot. And so I did that for a couple of years. And that was when I was like, I like working with patients. I like seeing people get better, but that's when I transitioned and opened my first gym.
Oh, you had a gym.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So had a gym. It was a CrossFit gym. So I mean, and people were like CrossFit. Now I was doing CrossFit probably 2007, 2008. Man. People used to see me just like, what is this guy doing? I was always about CrossFit. So when I was about 22, 23, I opened the CrossFit gym, and then I opened a parkour gym with a friend, and then I realized I don't like managing people. I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
stand this.
Right.
I
Right.
can't
Right.
stand this. And I was like,
Right.
I need to figure this out. I need to get out of this.
Right. Right. Now, CrossFit. When I heard you say that, I'm thinking a Tybo. That's what that just came to my mind. I mean,
That's
you remember
funny.
him?
Yeah, I remember. I was just looking at someone was talking about, was it Billy Blake? Someone was talking
Yeah,
about
Billy
Tybo.
Blanks. Tybo.
Yep. That's hilarious. It's
Yeah,
a
a
little
little
bit
bit
different, but I
different.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So CrossFit is a mixture of gymnastics, weightlifting, and like hit training, high intensity. What is that? High intensity interval training. I'm missing an
Hmm.
I.
Hmm.
But yeah, that's basically what it is. So it's a mixture of like clean and jerk for like weightlifting. You're in the rings, you're doing those things, and it had its moment. It was big for I would say like 4 or 5 years, and then it kind of died
It
down. I
died
really
down.
feel like, but
Okay.
yeah, I was into that. I was into kettlebells and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, I just loved it. I loved it.
What What's your max weight that you were able to push up?
Um, you know what? I was never, to tell you the truth, probably deadlift, probably, I don't know, 375. Nothing crazy.
It's about 300 pounds
Um,
more than me.
it's nothing great. I tell people I can't bench worth anything. I tell because so this is when I was a lifeguard and I was a swim instructor. I was so stupid. I used to weightlift with all these guys that were older than me, like 5 or 6 years when I was first getting. I dislocated my left shoulder when I was like 15 or 16. Afterwards, like lifting overhead, I could never do anything impressive. I'm like, listen, I can move some groceries, I can do that, I can use kettlebells, but I'm like, no, I don't even try it. I don't even
Right,
try that weight.
right, right. And so, how did you find yourself at ESPN? How'd you get there?
Mm.
Not an easy task.
Huh.
Well, maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe you seem to be moving. You seem to be moving pretty good here, Doc.
No, I mean, I'll tell you what. I'm not special. I'm telling you what. I'm not special. The only quality I think is I'm just insanely um, relentless. Like I just really hound people to know. I'll go to the ends of there to find people. So you know what happened was. Now that you're making me think back, what happened was okay. What happened was the Arnolds. Have you? Do you know what the Arnolds are? The Arnold Sports Classic or anything like that?
I don't believe I do.
Okay. So there's this event. It's in Columbus, Ohio every year. Arnold puts on this crazy event. And I'm talking about, I think they said it's more than, I got to check it. It's an outrageous number. The point is, it's the most amount of athletes competing during a weekend in the United States. It's massive. Takes over
Okay.
all of Columbus. There's multiple buildings, all of these things. So when I was had my gym and I knew I needed to exit, I had my friend Jay. He was my videographer. We're still good friends. I was like, I need you. They're having this reality show that they're filming at this place, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger. And at the time, I didn't know it. Steven, was it Sylvester Stallone had another TV show that was on NBC, and Arnold actually sued that production because it was what we ended up doing. But it was a reality show. It was all these trainers from around the US, and they filmed it over 3 days, and it was going to be a reality show that they were going to pitch it to a network. So I ended up on that. I got in third place, and one of the judges was the guy that owned part of On It. I know this is a long story, but he owned it for
I
On
like
It.
it.
I started writing for him, that magazine, when On It still had a magazine. And I was like, okay, where can I go to really just establish myself as like one of the best writers, a beat writer, whatever it is? And so I started thinking, I want to go to ESPN. I want to go to ESPN.
Mm.
Now, the main thing is everyone always pitches ESPN, but no one pitches the entities around ESPN. For example, ESPNW. And ESPNW has to do with the branch of all of the basically women's sports.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you've seen like WNBA, it's not as supported. So so first of all, I got online. I saw all of the editors for ESPNW. I found their Twitter handle, and then I just kept DMing them nonstop, saying, "Hey, I already wrote. I was just on a reality show. I write for this magazine. I did da 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 da. Let me in." And my unique angle was I already have a CrossFit gym. I want to cover the CrossFit Games that was on ESPN at the time. So I was like, I'll drive myself. I'll take the flights, whatever. Let me do the interviews. I'll write for ESPN. And because like just that tenacity, and I just was hounding nonstop. And you know what? They made a mistake. That they emailed me and they gave me a number. They gave me a number with an extension. And I called that number nonstop, leaving messages weekly until they picked up and they're like, fine, just go, just do this one thing. And that was my end. That's how I started working there.
That is amazing, but that's usually what it takes. That's what it takes. It takes that relentlessness, and then it takes a. I'm not. Well, we'll lean it on luck, but it just takes. You wouldn't have gotten that had you not been in the mix. Had you not been in the mix, had you not been relentless, had you not pursued what it was you want to do. Now, the one thing I like, you say you had this issue, which you've overcome it very, very well. I will say that this learning issue, but yet you were comfortable writing.
Yeah.
I mean,
I mean,
because I'm trying to put this together, Doc, and you were comfortable writing. You pursued it, knowing that you're gonna have to write. So at this point, you had gained the confidence that you needed, or you just wanted to do that.
I just want to do that. I mean, I'll tell you this. I've always I'm not a good writer. I mean, so I always tell people I know I'm the least talented person in my family. My sister's actually a published writer. She writes novels and everything, so I can't write as good as her. I think I'm okay with art, but my other sister's a graphic designer. I'm not as good as her.
Okay.
I can't draw as good as her. So I always tried writing. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, I didn't know this until like I was an adult. I didn't know I had a written stutter. I didn't know that was a thing. So when I would write things, I would write the same three words over and over and over again when I was writing. Even when I write, it's like it would be and it would always like I'd have this written stutter. I didn't know it was a thing until I talked to a therapist.
Right.
But the thing was, I just kept trying, and I would write and write, and then my wife is she's an editor at a
Okay.
publishing house. She would just edit my stuff, so I would do
Perfect.
that, and also too, I had this thing. I would just record my voice and transcribe it. So I'm like, listen, I don't care. I want this job. I'm going to find other ways to do it. Like, I might not be the best, but I know I can be better than half of these people just by trying. So I just looked at it. I want the recognition. I want to be part of ESPN. I want this. I don't care if they tell me I'm going to be a garbage man. I'll do that if you still let me have the words ESPN on my resume.
On my
So
resume.
I just did
Yeah.
it. So yeah, and then I knew I wanted to go to video, but writing, especially at that time, they would only get beat writers. Like you weren't going to just have at that time, like just be able to do, sideline reporting. I found a way to do it, but I had to get in there writing first.
This is I like where this is going because you're talking about what you were able to do to overcome. And I think about consistency. I think about not making excuses. And I think about perseverance. I mean, all these things come to my mind, and I'm just so glad that you're sharing it. You're willing to tell us about that. Now, one of the most, I don't know if I should say famous, but when I think of beat writers, I think of Stephen A. Smith. And so, what actually is a beat writer? Because I know he got famous, he got broken in by covering Allen Iverson in Philadelphia. But what do beat writers actually do?
That's a great question. Basically, you're on the beat. So you're on a very specific topic or sport, and you're just on the grind. You're there on the street. You're covering that specific one. So you'll have national broadcasts. You'll have national writers like Howard Beck and stuff like that. Like they dip into the cities or like, okay, Golden State's hot. We're going to talk about Golden State. Celtics hot. They're going to talk about that. But the beat writers are with the players or with that sport nonstop. And so you usually have a column or some kind of blog that you're just chronicling all of the things that have to do with that team.
Okay, okay. Now, are you independent or are you? So you're independent.
Great question. Great question. Most beat writers are independent, but sometimes it's a beat writer with like the Boston Globe. Like Gary Washburn is a beat writer, but he's with the Boston Globe. Jay King with the Athletic. So sometimes you're independent, and a lot of times you're under the umbrella. Like ESPN has tons of beat writers. A lot of them are independent contractors, and that's what I was.
Okay, great, great, great. And then somewhere in the mix there, you move on to the WNBA, start doing work for them.
Yeah, yeah.
How
So
was that?
CrossFit was, yeah, CrossFit was over for the season, and I wanted to break into a major sport. To tell you the truth, before at that point, I really didn't follow basketball that much, of course, because I'm from New England. I always followed Boston, and Paul Pierce was my favorite player, but I never really like studied it too much. But I saw that everyone wanted the NBA. Everyone wants the NBA, but no one would cover like WNBA or only for playoffs and things like that. And DC, just being honest, with most of our sports teams, we're not that good. So with the Washington
Right, right.
Mystics, I was like, let me just cover them. And that was before the G League. It used to be the D League, the developmental league. Then it switched to the G League, which is like the minor leagues of the NBA. I
NBA, right.
started covering them too, but before the G League like popped off and there was a DC team, Capital City Go-Go, I was like, let me cover the Mystics. And so they let me cover the Mystics, and I had my press pass. but then I brought my videographer with me because I was like, I'm going to do sideline. Like, so most beat writers, they don't have a crew, they don't have anything. And I was just like, I had my video crew. I was, interviewing just tons of people. And I was like, even if they won't show it, I'm going to have my own reel. I'm going to have my own video reel to take it to my next step, whatever I'm going to do.
Right, right. That was smart too. That was smart. Thinking ahead, thinking ahead. You always thinking ahead. It's going good. It's going good. And then you get on the sideline, so you're there. Now, are you surprised at the growth of the WNBA? Because it seemed like you were down there for some of the Genesis years.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I love what it is right now. I mean, it's just crazy how much people love like the LA Aces and what's going on with Sabrina against Steph over All-Star weekend. People like it's great. It's phenomenal. I think it was
Yeah.
I love to see it. They've always been talented. It just took people to catch up.
Yeah.
And I love it. I love how it was going. I always saw the personalities were there. The personalities were there. They just couldn't figure out how to market it right. But I
Mm-hmm.
think just how many places the NBA is going and how they're trying to do it, I love to see explosion. Just wait until Caitlin Clark gets there. People are
Caitlin
going to go
Clark.
crazy when
Yeah,
she gets
yeah.
in there.
Yeah, I think her, Angel Reese, I mean, they're coming up. They're coming up. I
Listen,
mean,
don't even talk to me about how much I love LSU.
yeah.
Their team and Emma. Listen, the NIL deals like have changed so much in women's sports. And Reese is from B-More, by the way. I
Right,
don't know if
right.
people know about this. Listen,
Yeah,
DMV finally has some people. She's going to be great. But she
yeah.
could do whatever she wants. She can go
Correct.
to that WNBA. She could start her own thing, and she would just be fine. She doesn't need the WNBA. Honestly,
No.
I think so. She's just so good. I love seeing personalities with that. You can just tell there's certain personalities. I love to see it, but yeah, they're going to be electric. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, she is. And actually, her and Caitlin actually do get along.
I
Her and Clark, yeah, they do get along. I mean,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I like, you know what I like? I like that they haven't allowed the media to kind of pull them apart. They just stay within themselves. I mean, and why not? I mean, they're making a couple $1,000,000 a year, you know. It's like no reason
It
to fight.
I love it. I love it. It was so smart what they finally did. I mean, it just they should have done it in college. They were already making money, and don't even get me started about it. I'm just glad that they can legally get it. They're not
Right.
going to be like, don't get me started about Reggie Bush and what they did to him. Like,
Oh, they
it's so stupid. It's so stupid what they ended up doing.
yeah.
Taking his Heisman. I don't even, it makes me mad. It makes me so mad because adults are making all this money behind the scenes and they're blaming these kids that are first time they see any kind of money and they're going to
Right.
penalize them. So I'm all
Right.
about, some people don't like NIL deals, but I'm like, you know what? It actually has it incentivized. And I feel like there's going to be a curve, especially in the NBA. I think some players will stay in college more now that they're making money. Let them stay. Give them more opportunities. So I know that's a small rant, but can't
No,
stand
no,
when
no.
they
I
did
mean,
that.
it's good because, like you say, not everybody's going to go to the next level. I mean, we only talking about the people making millions, but there may be some lower level advertisers where somebody's making 50, 60, maybe $100,000. I mean, and that's awesome. I mean, that's some good money when you're in high school, 20 something years old, earlier than
It's crazy.
25, $100,000. I mean, that's pretty good. That's
Life
pretty good.
changing.
Yeah, and especially like you say, the entities are making way more money off of them and have been for years. I mean, it's the kind of thing where this little money, these contracts they're giving out now, you won't catch up.
No, no. And and I hate it when everyone's like, well, we're giving them the education. That's why it's worth it. I'm like, okay, like I got you, but like think about the TV deals. Like I like, yeah, then like, are you serious? Like that equates because you're giving them an education. They can make millions off of you. Look
Right.
at Zion, like what he did for Duke. I don't want to even. I'm like, it was
Yeah.
so out of control
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
now it's balancing it out. And
Yep.
guess what? I know some people don't like some of the bigger schools or how they have the deals, but I'm like, guess what? This is so much better than it was 10 years ago. The other option were some of the players had to go to the G League early because they were going from high school and they had to wait a year before they could go, or they would play overseas and then come back a
Overseas.
year.
Correct. Overseas. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, it's starting to get a little bit more competitive. And we see even some of those changes happening in collegiate football with Deion Sanders. That's a whole nother place, man. That's just a phenomenon. What's going on there in Colorado? But we'll get to that. We'll get to that at another show. We'll book another one for that one, Doc. My God,
Yeah,
that's good
yeah,
stuff,
no,
man.
he's it's phenomenal. It's
Yeah,
phenomenal.
yeah. So you finish up there with ESPN, WNBA, and where do you go? You go to Via Media.
Yeah. So okay. So in between this, I was working at ESPN, and I was the editor in chief, whatever you want to call it. I was the online editor for a online magazine called Sweat RX. It was all about CrossFit. And after that, I was trying to think about like what am I going to do next because you get paid for each role, everything like that. And then I started covering more CrossFit athletes. And what I noticed was like, okay, like every athlete, you're going to get your time in the sun and everything like that. You'll get your shine, but your 15 minutes of fame are going to be up like just like that. So
Wow.
that's when I was like, hey, you already see that I'm a writer. I'm doing stories about you. And I could do a style of just conversation. I see a lot of people like they just don't know how to hold conversations. They might be some are good beat writers, they're just terrible interviewers.
Okay.
And I could talk to a lot of athletes. They knew I could write and I was doing things online. So I'd be like, "Hey, have you been thinking about your brand? Like what are you going to do after this sport? What are you going to do?" Like so a lot of them weren't thinking about that. And this is probably like 2012, 2013 range, something like this.
Okay.
And Instagram was around, stuff like that. But I was like, you don't have a place where people can sign up for your newsletter. You don't have your own audience. What's going on with that? Let me just write these sequences. Let me write for you. I'll take your voice. I'll write out all this stuff so you can be making money and release your own projects later on, your own products. And that's what I started doing. I started ghostwriting for athletes. I would start, building their marketing campaigns. And one of my first like big clients, her name was Christmas Abbott. She was a really big deal at the time in CrossFit. She ended
Mhm.
up like on the show Big Brother. She was a NASCAR. She was the first female NASCAR pit crew member. So she was getting a lot of attention. She's only like 5'2". She's just jacked. And
Yeah.
and so she's like, hey, I've got this idea. I want to create an app. Can you do it? And in fitness, if you know any kind of tech, they automatically think that you can do like all these other things. And I'm like,
Right.
apps are very different than that. But I was like everything else, I'm like, yeah, sure. If you can pay me, I'll figure it out.
I'll
And
figure
that's
it out.
how it started into like no code and figuring out all of these other tools because she wanted this done. I was like, I'm going to figure it out. And I just deep dived into that. And that's how it happened.
Wow. Wow. No quit. No
No.
excuses. Let's get it done. Figure it out. And this is before branding. Well, branding was always there for big companies, right? But not for little people, not for athletes, and not for the person around the corner. It wasn't there
Yeah.
branding.
No, not really. And I think in the last 10 years it's really popped off, but like that was still new. If you
Right.
weren't getting co-signed and like picked up by a big organization,
Right.
micro influencers, nano influencers really wasn't a thing. It just
Right.
wasn't there.
Right.
And so it was capitalizing on that. I had some ins with other people, so I started building that. And the thing is, eh, when you're just trying to the main thing is a lot of people try to gatekeep and like, oh, you got to do this. You can just ask questions. You can just ask questions. So when I was trying to do this, I didn't know these tech terms, and that's
Correct.
like my channel. Like I didn't know anything. I was just like, I would explain it in very, just how I was like, is there a back way to connect this? And they would be like, oh, that's an open API. I didn't know what that meant. I was just
Right.
like, how do
Right.
you connect these things? And they're
Right.
like, this is what it means. And that's what I think that's what endeared me to a lot of clients because I didn't use a lot of big words because I didn't know those big words. I just knew what I needed to get done on what I wanted. And that's how I learned. In flashback in high school, my dad's been in IT. He's been, please, he's just built computers by hand. He's done everything. I
Uh-huh.
tried coding and I failed. Again, dyslexia
Right.
before all this stuff. I used to get so confused programming, but I enjoy trying to figure things
Figure it
out.
out. Right.
So, that's no code and all of that world that just naturally I gravitated towards that because I still wanted to do those things. It
Right.
just now they had the technology. And I know some people like no code, it's been around for like 20 years. Yes, but now it's the rise of smaller and the multitude of different no code tools. Yeah, we had
Right.
Microsoft Access and Cold Fusion and like all of Dreamweaver, but like this was the first time at scale you could get all of these different no code tools.
Yeah, and the access. I mean, YouTube has grown so much, and I do remember Dreamweaver, but like you say, to pull it apart, I mean, it wasn't really affordable. There was so many dead ends. I mean, you get so far, and then all of a sudden you need to hire somebody, or you can't find any more information about where you
Yep.
got caught up and hung up at. So I definitely know I understand where you're going with it, and so and that lands you at some point you get to via media. Now let me just ask, because we talk about social media, we talk about new media. Draymond Green's talking about new media, and you see all these athletes opening these media companies. What? How would you define media today?
Yeah, that's interesting. I would probably define it as a brand that is distributing a type of content. That's it. I mean, I think because really, I mean, this might going back and like this might be too much, but like the Gutenberg press, what was that so impressive? Now you could have like print and the letters moving and everything like that. The Gutenberg press, right? So that now it scaled it to be more books and everything like that. I know someone's going to be like, well, actually, generally. Okay, so now we get over there. Then we go to papers. After
Mm-hmm.
papers, you would always have to write for a paper, but then there was the rise of blogs. Once you had
Mm-hmm.
blogs, you could be your own distribution, all those things. Once you became a blog, and look at Barstool Sports back in the day, if you love them or hate them, they started as a blog. But really, they took off when you could produce content and it could be under one branding. And
Right.
that's what media companies are. You're distributing a type of content to your audience and they resonate with that. And that's new media. That's a media brand. And because of that, and especially with YouTube and Twitch and all of these platforms that let you start for free,
Mm-hmm.
everyone gets to be their own media powerhouse if they choose to be.
Wow, that's great. That's greatly put. And now, so you start building apps, and at some point you get good at it,
Yeah.
like where you are now, which is how I found you.
Well, I'm
You
glad.
messed
Thank
me
you. I'm
up, man.
okay.
You messed me up. I mean, I tell the story. I say, you know what? I had so much to do that Saturday, and actually that Sunday too. And I spent 2 days. I'm not even going to tell you how many hours watching your videos on YouTube. And then I scrolled down. I said, "Am I the only one that's ever done it?" And then I see you almost at 2 million views on all your videos. And I said, "Okay, well, I'm not alone." You know, and but and it's great that you put that content out. I mean, it really is. And like you said, no big words, simple, taking the time. You got the video there, and you're pointing everything out step by step. I'm gonna tell you, if anybody that knows me knows that I'm that way, I'm gonna bury myself into what it is that I want to do, even if I hire somebody to do it, because I want to understand it. And I can tell you, you have to go through multiple videos to understand what you put out in one video. Or it may be multiple videos, but you'll get it in that one video. You don't need another video to understand what you were saying. And I really appreciate that. You take your time. If more, well, don't let them do it. Let them keep doing what they're doing. You keep doing what you're doing. I was going to say, if more content creators could do that, it'd be easier, but let them keep doing what they're doing. And you just keep in rhythm where you are, man. Because I'm really telling you, Doc, it was so clear the stuff you put out, the streaming videos, um, the coursework you put out, the app building, the cloning, all of this stuff was just so easy to understand, and it made me believe that I could do it, and I'm working on it.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I mean, honestly, that's what I wanted because I just felt like no one was speaking to me when I was looking at these tutorials. Or, I had some friends that were developers. I would just be like, just explain it to me like the basics. And there sometimes maybe it's a curse of knowledge. Like some people like there's so many steps ahead, they forget what it's like when they first began and
That's
what they need to
important.
ask. And to me, I use so many different tools. I'm trying to learn. I'm constantly a novice. I'm asking these dumb questions. Like a lot of times I used to get, I don't get it anymore. Some people will be like, this is too basic, or why are you going over the front page? Why are you going over the pricing? Because I'm like, because that's where I was stuck. Like that, like before I did all this stuff, I didn't understand even the pricing tier because
Right.
I didn't understand these things. So I was like, that's the videos I put out. And to your point, I didn't forget your question. Your question was, how did I end up at VaynerMedia? There's a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. He was pretty. I mean, I still love him. He's put out a lot of content. He's really, really, I think, came into his own like in the early teens, 2010s. But he had VaynerMedia, and how I got in, it was Vayner Sports. He just created a sports agency, and that's how I got him.
Okay.
AJ, his younger brother, they were just starting it out before they had anyone signed. I went there, and then I was like, how can I do more content with you guys? Like, what's going on? And then through clients and everything, I started creating content for their clients, and then I ended up having clients from them. And then it was just like people saw, basically it was this thing. Gary at the time had about 23 people creating content for him. He had
Wow.
23 people following him around all the time. And
Wow.
these kids would just burn out because Gary doesn't stop. What you see on camera, 98%, that's Gary all the time. And what I did was with automation and no code tools, I took what 23 people could do. I made it I made it that only one person could do it and do
That's
23 people's jobs. And that's how I ended up doing the Gary V content model 2.0 with automation and no code tools. That's how like I got invited to speak to their audience and work with their clients. And then they were doing this. This was right before COVID hit. I was teaching people how to live stream because I'm like, you need long form for people to understand your audience. And before you know it, like live streaming took off because everything was shut down 3 months later. And that's how it happened.
wow. Wow. Trendsetter. You keep
I don't
giving me
know.
all these
It was
words,
timing.
man. I mean, you keep
But you know
giving me
what?
all these words.
You said something, and I always say, when people say lucky, I always say it's timing mixed with I forget the exact phrase, but basically preparation.
Oh,
I train
absolutely.
a lot, and
Hmm.
then it's just that moment. Like
Hmm.
sometimes it never happens, but I'm like it's that mixture. And if we really want to go off on a tangent, one of the guys again, Jay, what I can do in tech, Jay can do with seeing talent for music acts. And his timing, like he is so on point. He can always pick like this is going to be a trend, this is going to pop. I got to find this real quick to like prove my point. He found this kid out of nowhere, and off his, no joke, his
Hmm.
first song, I'm looking at how many views he got off of this one song. And I just feel like that's how we always came together because I can
Creative.
spot maybe, yeah, trends. I knew what was going to happen. And I knew live streaming, what Gary was doing. I was like, people are going to learn how to do it at home. And people, the technology and the way it looks, people want candid, people want raw, people want
Right.
it the day in the life. And I was
Right.
like, people need to learn how to capitalize on that. And if you can do that, people will now follow your brand if they
Right.
see you being comfortable. And that's how it happened.
Well, I don't know if you remember like the real world and stuff like that, where people started getting into your true authentic self. That really started in the early 90s, right? So now you're talking
Absolutely.
about here we come full stream where we're taking it from commercial and allowing it to be more of a residential use kind of thing, and
Absolutely.
yeah, and so here we are, you and I, YouTube, and you've got a light, I got a light, we got a mic and headphones, and we're working, low
And
budget production, but we're getting it out, you know?
look, and if you look at what Shannon's done a great job, Shannon Sharp and all of
Yep.
his stuff, but like the nightcap, what he does with Ocho Cinco, like the things, it's the format. People love you. So
Right.
it doesn't have to be this high end, but people love you being in your own room, being
Right.
comfortable in your chair.
Right.
If you see those numbers, his numbers do higher than when he's on first take a lot of times
Oh yeah. Yeah.
because you're authentic and people just love seeing you. I found this thing. He did the video. It was 3 years ago. The kid did 39 million views on that
Wow.
one video.
What's it? Is it okay to give his name?
I can. It's going to be, he's a meme now. His name's Mario Judah.
Okay.
And he was this one time. It was really, and like if you see him, you'll see what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
He was a
Yeah.
one hit wonder. Don't even get me started. That's a huge story. What happened there? Oh man, that was wild. But
There's a lot of
Jay
one hit
found him.
wonders.
Yep. And Jay found him out of nowhere. Jay saw him and like he's like the look and feel. He's like the voice. He looks like he's not what you think when you hear him. He's got it. And he'd done it 3 or 4 times throughout about a 6 year period. He could find just these kids and he's like, they're gonna win. I'm not sure if you ever heard about like the players ball for basically all the pimps in the United States.
Oh yeah, of course.
So, Dave made it popular. So he did the Players Ball documentary that Vice picked up and everything. Like, Jay knows. Jay can
Right.
see it. Jay knows what's going to happen.
He's
And
got an eye for talent.
yeah. And I feel
Wow.
like that's the same way he has for talent. That's what I have for trends and technology of like I get a feeling. I'm like, this is going to work. This is
Right.
what's going to happen with this kind of like content or branding. So
You know what it sounds like when you study, and I tell sometimes people call me and they say, Daryl, what are you doing? I say, I'm studying. And they say, oh, you signed up for some classes? I said, no, I'm studying what's already out to see where this thing is going. See, that's where and it sounds like, and you're only going to get even better because everything that you're looking at, you're finding out that it's all really connected. Even though it's the different industries and it's even happening, not even at the same time with the same people, they're doing something related to that. Just they're doing it in a different way. Right. So, it's funny. They're doing it in a different way. Like even cable is being streamed now. HBO is streaming. Everything's streaming. We don't know it because they're still calling it cable, but it's all being streamed. They said, do you have a streaming? Do you have streaming? No, I don't have any streaming. Do you have cable? Yeah, I have cable. Well, it's being streamed.
Yeah.
Yeah,
no, it's true. No, it's I heard this term which I really like. They were talking about basically society goes through bundling and unbundling. And what I mean by that is when there's a trend like cable, it's all one package. Well, what's the unbundling? Well, it was streaming. It was unbundling what cable had. What's happening now because prices? Now you're bundling back up. Disney's doing this, and you can see it in trends. You can see it in all these things. There was a lot of individual communities in message boards, chat rooms, blah, blah, blah. Facebook allowed you to bundle everything together. Then a lot of people don't like Facebook. Now they try to go individual communities, different platforms. It's really interesting seeing these trends. And yeah, I agree with you. If you study and just look at what's going on, I say take something from an industry that's working and then rinse and repeat it in a different vertical.
right.
You go crazy. You go crazy.
Same thing. And I feel like somehow you've been able, and before I go to AppSumo, the one thing that came to my mind when you were talking about Gary, I believe his name's Gary, correct?
Yep, Gary.
Was your ability to implement systems quickly.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. I think it sums it up. The thing is too, and this is, I mean, if we're going to talk about another thing on top of this, I'll stop talking. But growing up, I mean, in the early 90s, like, I guess I didn't know. I have ADHD that they say now. I don't know. I don't remember ever hearing that as a child. I don't remember ever hearing that. I just remember there were some kids that you were wound up. They would put you on Ritalin, and that was about it. And I had that, and my mom was against any kind of medication. She was like, no, you're just going to learn how to do it. Like, my mom was always about herbs. She's like, put this under your tongue. Like, just put that. She was not about that medicine. So with that, she was just like, you just learn differently. You have to do something differently. And mine was tactile. Like, again, in college, I almost failed anatomy and physiology. My mom's like, you're not failing that. And she borrowed a skeleton from my neighbor, and she put Post-it notes on everything. And she's like, you're good with tactile. Like, just learn. And that's how I learned all of the bones in the body. It was just feeling the different oscillations, different parts of it. And then I would write down it. And that's how I passed anatomy and physiology. It was because of my mom. And the same thing when it's systems. I wanted to learn these things that a lot of people they just can learn better than me. They could just learn faster. So building a progression of documentation and systems to learn things very quickly, that is what I had to do to get to just like keep up with people. So when you
Mhm.
said that about systems, I'm like, yeah, it all comes down to systems. That's the only
That
thing that keeps me relevant or how I can learn these things.
no, and you know what? The great thing about it, it keeps you highly valuable because most people they don't even realize they're working in a system. So when things break down, they don't know how to troubleshoot it. Then you got frustration, and then you got all, and it just goes down a bad road from there. But working within a system, just knowing that, hey, listen, first we need to develop a system, regardless of what it is. I don't care what you're doing, flying paper airplanes, whatever it is you're doing. If you're a professional candy eater, whatever you're doing, you know what I mean. There's a system, there's a way that you're going to go about doing this thing, and you need to do that. And I tell you, the fact that you've been able to do that, and you've had the opportunity to do that with and move in and out with, I'll say, so-called learning challenges, which we all probably qualify. You were just diagnosed. you were just diagnosed. We were misdiagnosed because I know I had the scoliosis. We were diagnosed perfectly with that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But all the other things, I mean, they were there. Let's just face it, they were there, you know. But I appreciate that. So you're doing all this stuff. You got the confidence to. Sounds like you got the confidence at this point, even working with Gary, to work with anybody. I mean, you got ESPN under your belt. You open the gym, CrossFit gym. You got that under your belt, but you know you just want to do your own thing. You don't really want to work with people. And now you're getting invited to speak here and there. The confidence is way up here, man. I mean, I understand because I know how it would feel. App Sumo. By this, were you comfortable building apps at this time? I mean, because there weren't as many coding things out there as there is now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. I guess my wife says this like because she's always been my project manager and everything. She's big. She's like imposter syndrome. She's like, are we even allowed to do this? Like, are we? You know what I'm saying? And to me, I'm just like all these people. Like, I'm gonna do it. Like, I just have always had that attitude. Yeah, I'm gonna work hard and I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna lie. If I
Right,
can't do it, I'll let you know. But you got to try. And
right.
so it was that just irrational. Maybe some people call it irrational confidence, but I'm like, no, I think I can give it a shot. And so
Mm-hmm.
with AppSumo, with all of their stuff, basically at that point, I had like pretty much with AppSumo, I think I started buying their stuff maybe like 2011, 2012. I pretty much started using no code tools, like maybe 3 or 4 different ones a month. The
Mm-hmm.
last time I checked, I think my number's over like 650. But I'm just constantly just going through and rattling through and learning different things. So I think I was pretty proficient at that time. Um, but looking back, I just didn't know what I didn't know. I at the time I was like, yeah, I'm pretty much got all this dialed in. There was two more levels. I was like, man, if I knew that, but at that time I really didn't need to know that information. Like
Okay.
honestly, it was
Okay.
just enough to I needed to create apps to make people money or to make
Right.
them save time or make money, and I was able to do that.
That's the main thing. That's the main thing. That's the main thing. What are some of the common challenges you see with new businesses?
Two things. One thing that you mentioned already, most new businesses don't have operations in place and they don't know it sometimes or a lot of times they just think like, oh man, everything's crazy, and they don't understand that they're going to bottleneck themselves so much, and then we got to reinvent the wheel. So I think a lot of times for new businesses, processes and systems, and number two, let's just talk about your end goal. Let's just talk about it. A lot of times people are like, I don't want to say they want to humble brag, but they're just like, oh, this is enough. But it's like, let's just do tiers, good, better, best. Do you want to be in this business in the next 5 years? Do you want to sell it? Like, let me know, and let's reverse engineer to get to that point. If you want to make 100K, tell me you want to make 100K, right? And sometimes it's giving them the confidence, giving them the imagination to dream.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they just weren't given that. And so it's harder. But like, let's talk about bigger picture. And that's really hard if the business is not making money and people are stressed right at that time. So it's that balancing what's going on with you right now. Where are you? What's your pain point? What's keeping you up at night? What's causing you the most time and energy? Let's talk about it. But long term, down the road, years later, where do you want to be so we can start planning in that direction? Because a lot of times people, they're doing this business and then you find out like 2 years later, they're like, I hate it. I'm like, I need to know that before you hate it.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Right.
we need to figure out an exit plan. Because if you're already mentally checked out, like it can't work. So I think it's understanding process and system. Where are they right now? And what's their long-term goal? Money, monetarily, but also like, what's your dream job? I think a lot of times people are like, oh, I just want to be in Jamaica and my business, I sold it for millions of dollars. But the reality is a lot of people say that and then they start another business because they're bored. What they really want is more structure that a manager or an operator can be in place. People aren't calling them on the beach
Mm-hmm.
and they still make a residual income from that business. And so, that's what we got to talk about.
Okay. Okay. Now, as you were talking, something came to mind, Doc. Do you find that some of the younger people that are going into business, they want to skip steps? I mean, because you're a systems guy, you look at it, and maybe like before we get to 10, we still got to go through 1 through 9. Is it that simple, or do you, like I say, do you find people wanting to skip ahead, not put in the work, so to speak? You hear people saying you want to cheat the game, you don't want to put in the work. Do you find that a lot?
Absolutely. But you know what? I find that, okay, so I mean, this might be a small tangent, but there, where we are now in our new building, it's an old building. It's an old furniture factory. And they have these old salesman book. The guy's dead. Like the grandkids like didn't want his books. We found it and it's from the 1930s about how to be a salesman. And all
Mm-hmm.
the things that they say in 1936 what people need to do is the same things you need to do now. So I think with a lot of people that are like, oh, kids are lazy. I'm like, yeah, but I think there was kids lazy in the 50s too. Like
Right.
I think humans are just lazy and try to get away with things.
Right.
And now it's so much easier because of the technology and kids. I think I read it. It was a couple of years ago, but like the most sought off job that kids want are to be a YouTuber. I think it eclipses any other job. I think it's a YouTuber for kids. I mean, that's what they see. They don't even see like celebrities. I've had pictures of celebrities in the office. Kids have no idea who they are, but they know who the biggest influencer on YouTube is, right? They know who Mr. Beast is. They know all
Right.
these things. And so I think it's natural for people that want to if you can skip steps and make money, I think anyone will do it. I think the problem is now people see all these influencers and there's so much they see on Instagram and TikTok that they're like, I can be that kid. I can be this person. And it's so sensationalized that they're like, that can be me. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it might, but most likely it's not.
Right.
Most likely it's not.
Right.
And so, yeah, they skip steps. They don't understand it. But I think it's also how fast, how much content they're taking in, what people are seeing on TikTok, all of these things. I know I sound old, but that's just reality.
Right. Right.
I think
Right.
it's the reality.
Right. Right. Now, how do you help? Let's say you get a business, a new business or an existing business, and they pitch that plan to you, or you see what they're already doing, and kind of like the CrossFit thing where it phased out. Do you let them know, hey, listen, I think you need to stop now, or you need to look at something else because this is just that. It's right now. It won't be in 5 years.
It's a great question. It kind of depends on their mentality. Um, if they're ready to hear it. I mean, now I'm a lot more blunt than I used to be. I'd always be like, I can fix any business. Like I can
Right.
go in and we'll make it happen. But the reality is, okay, I need to know, do you have a family? Are people still financially like depending on you? Let's talk about it.
Right.
Because if I tell you to stop and you only hear me say stop and not what I say next, that might impact your whole family. And your wife is like, why are you quitting this? And it's like, oh, doc told me to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, let's have an exit plan. If this isn't working, how can we pivot? And so my advice when it comes to ones that have financial obligations, have a family, is very different than a 19-year-old that's still living with his parents
Mm-hmm.
and can pivot and do all of these things. For the most part, I'm mainly talking to the former. I'm usually talking to ones that have a family, have some kind of obligations. And
Mm-hmm.
so we need to be a lot more purposeful when we make those moves. And so a lot of times when I tell people, if they're trying to do an adventure or any kind, I say, don't quit your day job. Like, don't quit. Keep doing that and do this grind on the side. All this time of like, oh, I need to quit to find myself. No, you need to keep working at all these
Uh-huh.
for that money, and then we can figure out how to pivot.
Yeah.
So usually it's, hey, what do you like doing, or what skill do you have? What's the target number? Let's look at the market. Let's look at how we're going to do this. And then we go through it. So either freelancing, consulting, then we go into scaling into courses, resource guides, all of those things. But I see a lot of people that jump in. They're like, oh, I'm going to make a community. I'm going to drop a course. I'm going to do those things. I'm like, you're not really good at what you're doing yet. So you
Right.
need to be a freelancer. You need to be an agent. You need to do all these things. So that comes back to the steps. And we just review it. And, if they're like, hey, I want to do X, Y, and Z, or like, I want to make 100K at the end of the year. Okay, great. Where are we now? Oh, I'm not making anything. Oh, you don't have any clients? No, I haven't started. Okay, well, let's start here. Let's get you to $0 to $1, $0 to $10, 0 to 100 before we start talking about 100K.
Mm-hmm. 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 Now, how important, because you were introduced, like me, you were introduced to social media. We weren't born into it. We were born into TV. My grandparents weren't. They were dealing with radio. They were introduced to TV. So you and I, we were introduced to social media. How much, I don't even know if you can put a percentage on it, but do people only think that social media is going to work? And is it just that simple? Is social media the only marketing that can carry the business over the top?
Okay, that's an interesting thing that you mentioned. I would say yes and no. It can, but I would not bank on it. The other thing is, I would first have to understand like defining social media, because the reason is most of my personal brand now has been on social media on YouTube, right? But that was really fueled by all the 10 years plus that people didn't see on social media. You know what I'm saying? So when people see it popped off, it's like, oh, you have a successful YouTube channel, da 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 da. I'm like, yeah, but the format, what I was saying, that's all based off the back of tens of thousands of hours working with clients, working in businesses, and then you're just seeing the product on YouTube. So I think it could generate to a living, or what I do now. This is where all my clients, all the things I do has directly come from that channel. But for all that time, it was 5-7 years I was working on someone else's YouTube channel behind the scenes, ghostwriting and doing all those other things. So can it work? Possibly. What I would say is I wouldn't bank on it. And
Mm-hmm.
I see a lot of people do social first. I say you can do social first if you're treat social like it's a hobby and something that you really enjoy. Do not bank on it as a career path,
Right.
because I feel like people just go off the rails and they're like, this is the only way to approach it. I'm like, listen, local businesses, you can crush it with local businesses. It's not sexy. People don't want to talk about it. But I mean, I was working with a client today, and I was working with a restaurant, and someone came in and someone was giving out, business cards. I was like, what does he do? They're like, oh, he's a knife sharpener. He just sharpens everyone's knives. And I was like, they're like, that's what he does. He does 50 knives a day, and he just chills. And I was like, what? Like that's what there are so many unique things in business that I think being on social, it's a red herring. I think a lot of people get caught up in it too much. It's easier said than done, because most kids, they can't live without being on their phone. They can't live without being on TikTok and all those things. And I know it's
Right.
an old man yelling, but what I'm saying is like, the problem is there's so many other opportunities to serve local communities that aren't being reached, because most local communities are really 5 to 10 years, maybe 15 to 20 years behind in technology.
Mm-hmm.
And you could be crushing it if you go and help a mom and pop shop because their kids don't want to take over the business.
Mm-hmm.
You could invest, you could take that over or build them an app or do all of these things. It doesn't have to be tons of people. I'll stop on this rant. Tons of people are like, I want to create the next TikTok app. I'm like, they don't even understand how hard that is. I'm like, you want to create the next TikTok? They're like, yeah, I want to do that. I'm like, go talk to mom and pop shop, talk to a dry cleaners, talk
Mm-hmm.
to a laundromat,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
be useful for them. And I can guarantee you, you will make all the money compared to you trying to do something on TikTok.
You're right. You're right. You're so right. And I can't. I mean, you're really pouring it on right here now, Doc. And I appreciate that. You're really pouring it on because you've just given out some game to those that are saying, "Hey, what do I do now? Where can I go?" And I always say this. I'm 50. I was introduced to social media, which means it's not coming easy. It doesn't come easy. I'm already in the rhythm of life. So even if I want to do it myself, I find I don't have the time. Right? So, like you said to that young man or that young woman, hey, find somebody like me, give me a fair price, not $10,000 for your first app you're building and you don't even know how to build an app. You watch Doc, and I know he's good, but I'm not going to give you $10,000 and you never build an app. You know what I'm saying? Be fair, build your business, and you probably got a whole, what we used to call a farm, that whatever that radius is, 2 miles, 5 miles, you control business in that 5 mile radius. Anybody doing marketing, anybody doing social media content creation, you're shooting all that creation. You're shooting it for them. We don't have time. We don't have time. And that learning curve, hey, some of us got grandkids. I'm not at that place yet, but we just don't have time. And we're so far into our business, we're not going to give it up, but we do need to go there. So how do you determine if there is a way to determine when and if a business needs an app?
That's a great question. I mean, really, I look at what's going on with your time and energy, and then what are your customers asking of you? Not every business needs an app right away, or it might not be apparent. They might not need an app, but it might be you know, some kind of automation that you can put in the background, or a chatbot, or something that can speed up what you need done. So I'd really look at what's going on with a business, and then what are the pain points. Don't think of, I need an app for this business. It's a knee jerk. It's very trendy. People want to say like, oh, that you need an app. But the reality is, the trend is most people are deleting a lot of apps now. So there's progressive web apps, just something that they pin on their phone and they can go to, and it just acts like a normal app. Most people, like, it just depends on what you want to do. So I would look at, okay, if I'm going to talk to a welder, I'm going to talk to a welder or electrician. Okay, what are they struggling with? Is it they don't like talking to people and they just wish people would just book appointments with them? Okay, that could be an application, right? That could be something where they could easily book. Maybe it's a dry, no, it's a, what do you call it? It's a dry cleaner, or it could just be, yeah, it could be a dry cleaner. What are they saying? What's their audience asking? Maybe they want to pay online. Okay, that could be an app that you could be doing there. Look at the pain points and what your customers need or what you need. Another thing is an electrician. Maybe you're an electrician and you've got a bunch of people working with you, and you just need them. You can't read their handwriting because they're writing on a piece of paper. You have no idea. Well, maybe you need to create something that tracks their tasks and where they went to, what houses they went to, all of those things. Just think about what you're struggling with in your business or what your customer needs, and then start there.
Okay. Okay. And then go spend at least 48 hours and binge watch. We binge watch a lot of stuff. Now, I'm encouraging you, whoever's listening, whoever's watching, if you want to build an app, if you're going to attempt this, I'm telling you what to do now. This is free game. Go to YouTube. I believe it's at Doc Williams. Am I correct, Doc?
Yep. At
Yeah.
Doc Williams.
And just binge watch his videos. And I guarantee you, you're going to get through an easy 2 days and you will have the confidence to do that thing once you finish. Believe me when I tell you. So take your business to the next level, or
Say,
instant message him, or and help him get you over the hump. But definitely do that. There's so many people looking to do it.
yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Thank
I,
you. I
I
mean,
just can't
and
say
tell you the
enough.
truth, like you were saying,
No, go ahead.
when you have people that are just getting started and they might charge you 10K, I just tell them, like, first, show me your work. Or that's why I really started, because a lot of times I couldn't work with everyone. I want people to know how to do this. This is why I created videos. If I was doing an agency, create tiers where you're showing off your work, or just like, hey, you can do it if you have enough time, and I'll just pay me by the hour to help you when you need
Right.
help. Like, there's so many different ways to approach it. But like, I just say most apps, like, I mean, if you want me to talk about it, I can talk about different
Of
platforms, but
course.
there are so many great platforms. There's Buildfire, there's Good Barber, ones that are made for small businesses, and then there's ones like Flutterflow, but there are ones that I call them on rails. You're not going to break anything. And I
Hmm.
encourage businesses to try them out, so you know what you want to do, what you don't want to do. You could say, like, okay, I tried it out, I just don't have the time, or this is too basic, I need something else. But at least you know, than trying to go to an agency or someone.
Hmm.
Most developers, just right off the bat, they won't talk to you unless it's 10K. They
Wow.
won't talk to you. And to me, I just did not have that money. And that's why I was like, I don't have money, I have time. Let me
Right.
go and learn this. And the reality is, most people, if they have a couple hours, they can do this with no code tools. It can't do everything,
Right.
but a lot of small businesses can use no code to transform their business. But a lot of people get in the down the rabbit hole when they're trying to, I need to find the perfect platform. I need to just write down, what do you need help with? What are you struggling with in your business? Let's just go find the solution for that.
And let me ask you this, Doc, as you brought me here. You brought me here. Consultations. Do you find yourself doing consultations? Do you enjoy them? Do you open it? Are you open to do consultations?
Yes and no.
Okay. Well, that's
so
what you
so
see the way
this
I
is
asked the
this
question, right? Because I don't. I mean, I'm
yeah.
very particular about my time, and I don't want it to be wasted. So that's why
Yeah.
I asked you the way I did.
Yeah. So what I do is, I tell people, you don't need to ever pay me. Just go on my YouTube channel. Any comment, I will answer 99% of every comment. If you see it, like, people have responded back, they're like, wow, I can't believe Doc still responds. This video is 4 years old and you're still responding. I respond to any question.
Great.
When it comes to one-on-one consultations, I keep it real easy. 45 minutes of my time, it's $275. I don't care if you ask me about the weather, about your baby, about technology, it's $275. It's
Right.
$275.
Right.
And if people are like, I can't afford it, if it's the knee jerk, if people are like, you're too expensive, okay, great. No big deal. If people can't afford it and they give me a story and they're telling me, I'm like, okay, well, I can't, but I'll give you 10 minutes. Be on time, here's the Zoom link. I'll give you time, because people have given me an opportunity, but I also quantify time. In the same way, if I need to talk to someone in certain interviews that I've wanted, I have paid, and I tell them, I'm like, hey, I need to talk to you. Can I Venmo you, Cash App you 350 right now for 7 minutes of your time? And people think I'm joking. And by the way, when I didn't have the money, guess what? That was sometimes a week of my side hustle. I would take all that money to talk to someone for 7 minutes. So
Right.
I tell people, like, it's not just because I have money. No, I've always tried. But you've got to understand the value of people's time. And if people, I'm not going to trade my time for someone that could just watch my video and have done zero work. And they're like, I would love to pick your brain. You can go watch those videos, because I have over 450 videos.
It's
You just
there.
haven't done the work to look for it.
It's definitely
So
there.
I say yes and no. Yes
Yeah.
and no.
Yeah. It's definitely there. I attest to that. The information is there, and it's more importantly, it's plain. It's easy. I wrote a book, and people always ask me, Daryl, who'd you write it for? I wrote it for the young ones. Anybody can understand the book I wrote. And that's the way I write. I write to keep it simple. But I'm about to get you home here, Doc. what trends do you see coming up? Meaning, what I mean by that is you got a good eye. You got a good eye. If you were going to tell somebody, hey, don't start this, here are the three businesses that I think you should go into. Go into these three, and you're going to have a good run with these.
Hmm. That's an interesting question. Interesting question. I touched upon it earlier. I really think tech jobs, and when it's not really, I meant to say more labor intensive jobs like the trades. People aren't picking up on trades, and it's not glorifying, but like HVAC, plumbers, welders. I tell people that people want it to be some sexy, like it's got to be an. I'm like, listen, the population is aging out of these trades. If you want to go kill it, even if you don't want to do the trade, make that business and train other people, but learn, go into the trades. If I was going to look at a trend line, it would be it would be trades. It would be really niche problems that you totally understand that you can go solve, such as, I'll give you an example. My wife is so she does editing at a book house, but also she does like transcription. So like stenographers in the courtroom, she does the editing, right? And so she does all of that for the transcripts for the courts. Like if you understand an industry like that, you can make a killing creating an app for someone like that, because
Wow.
the competition is nowhere to be found, like
Mm.
because it's so niche. But there are hundreds if not thousands of people that need it, and I see what she's working on. I'm like, that looks like it's from Windows 95, but that's because
Yeah.
there's no competition. There's no competition. If I was going to go into pressure washing or cleaning windows, my brother-in-law does high rise window cleaning, right? So but now he's trying to make a micro SaaS for that industry, like because he understands it. He understands what they need. And those are the things. So it's not just trades, it could be something in tech, but it's got to be super specific. One example I give, like one of my former students, he wanted to do on demand, what do you call it? Just detailing cars.
Mm.
But it was laser focused. It was around very affluent areas around DMV. It was a lot of players that were on the like Washington football team, the Commanders, and all of those things. Like he was like, it was very niche. It wasn't, I want to do an on demand app for exterior cleaning. Very specific. And then the last trend would be, you know, think about your hobby, what you really, really love doing, and just start creating content. YouTube is big enough. I know people are like, it's oversaturated. You've got to be on YouTube for the love of the game. There, if you go onto YouTube and you think you're going to get a million subscribers, you're going to do all this, you're going to be in a world of hurt in a minute, and
Uh-huh.
you're going to be burned out and you ain't going to do it. But if
Right.
you just create content, just document yourself, just document it for the sake of, for yourself, your kids, whatever it is. But I think a lot of times there's so many different things you can find on YouTube. Um, I'm not joking. There's something called magnet fishing. I had no idea that was a thing. It's a huge thing for magnet fishing. I met one guy at a YouTube convention. He has millions of views. He reviews different types of elevators and escalators. Like, yeah, I mean, like, what? How did that
Wow.
happen? You know, one last guy. He's got he does his channel. I think is called Dad Reviews. It's
Uh-huh.
him being a dad, and he just buys stuff on Amazon. He reviews everything. That's his livelihood. That's his main business now. Just doing dad reviews. But it started out just because it was a hobby. He loved getting stuff off of Amazon. The one last thing. It was called what is it? Review Bra, like the review of the week. I gotta think. All he does is, and I think he has like 2.7 million followers now. He just
Wow.
reviews fast food items. That's all he does. But he's been doing it since he was 14. He started doing it with energy drink reviews, and he popped
Wow.
off from there. Now he's like 25. He's done it for 9 years, same format, over and over and over again.
You sound like I know you're not talking about him, but a friend of mine, Dame Drops, Damian Patterson.
Hmm.
He does food reviews,
No,
but
I gotta find out who this
he
is.
yeah, Dame Drops. He was big on it. He's from Connecticut, my hometown, so he was big on the YouTube thing. And you're right. I mean, you. most of the guys that are winning with this thing, they're doing what they were going to do anyway. They were going to do it anyway. This dad was going to buy that thing anyway. And now he just did a review, whatever long, and he recorded it. And it's media, like we just talked about. He's got a little media business going on, you know what I mean? And he was going to do it anyway, you know? Well, I'm not gonna take up too much of your time. But here we go, Doc. What has been the most challenging thing throughout it all? I know you mentioned some challenges in school, but it seems like that wasn't really a challenge to me. I don't know. But what has
Nah,
been
nah.
nah, what has been, would you say, one of the most challenging times, and how did you get through it, more importantly?
That's an interesting question. I have to think about this. I have to think about this. You know, I don't really know. The reason I'm pausing, because one of the most challenging times, I didn't used to talk about this public. I actually never talked about this until I started like my YouTube channel. Because of my dyslexia, because of tons of things. I mean, there's a whole other story of what happened where I used to live, and the NCAA had to get involved. But it
Mm,
basically, I was held back in second grade. I was held back, and that was earth shattering to me at the time. Earth shattering. And for years, I think I just had so much guilt and what's the word? Just shame involved with like that. And I don't think a lot of people understand that unless they were like held back or, held back a grade in school. Because when you're with a certain group of friends and you get held back a year, it's like almost they keep going and living and you don't.
mm.
It might seem dramatic, but especially for kids and especially for me, that was earth shattering. I
Wow.
understand why my parents did it, but that was one of the most devastating things in my life. I think from that, I already was driven, but that insatiable, like, so for years, I'll just put it in perspective. Most of the people that I knew before I got held back, I severed ties because I was too ashamed to talk to them. I basically never talked to them the rest of my life because I didn't want them to know that I was held back. Some knew, but like I would duck, dodge. I wouldn't talk to. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to
Wow.
disappear. But with that came, um, I think that built into my relentless, like, no one's ever going to do this to me if I have the power to do it. And it might not be the best way of life, but that fueled me to do anything, I feel
Hmm.
like. So I'm the youngest of the three. One of
Hmm.
my older sisters, she had this boyfriend, and I was pretty, by end of elementary school, middle school, I was heavy. I was pretty big. I was pretty fat. And when I started losing some weight, but I was probably like a freshman in high school. And I was telling him, I was like, I'm going to be in Muscle and Fitness. Muscle and Fitness was my magazine. I love Muscle and Fitness. And he's like, you're not going to be in that magazine. Like, you just don't have the genetics, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And by college, I was lifting pretty good. I sent him my before and after pictures. And I ended up in Muscle and Fitness.
Wow.
And I mentioned him in the article that this guy told me I was never going to be. And I mailed him a copy of that magazine
I bet
with
you
the
did.
amount for the $100 check. Oh, yeah. I was like, and he still remembers that because, and to me, maybe that's too much or I'm too petty, but I get this fire like nobody's business because if someone tells me I'm not going to do it, I'm just going to prove them wrong. I will go to the ends of the earth to make sure that person knows. I've drawn back a little bit more. I'm not as bad as I used
Yeah,
to
yeah,
be,
right, right.
but I go that far. And so, although I think that's probably the most challenging thing in my life, it spurred I really think it set the fodder or the fuel
Right.
that really made me what I did later on in life.
Wow. So you turned that setback into a comeback. And
Yeah.
you've never
Yep.
looked back. And it sounds like you've never looked back.
No, I mean, and the thing was, I think at that point, I would always make up excuses. During that point, it was very difficult all the way through
Mhm.
high school because I knew like though all those people, like it was just very difficult. But afterwards, when I was older and I was able to talk about it, like that just I think it made other people resonate more. I would never talk about like my disabilities and never talk about those things. But because when I was behind the scenes, I would never talk about, but especially with this personal brand. And when I started on YouTube, the first series, like all of them used to be just live streams. It was called Build With Me. And I did that because I just wanted people to be on the journey. It wasn't saying I was an expert. You could just build along with me.
Right.
And that's when I became more vulnerable and told more people about what it was. But yeah, I never looked back. I was like, I'm going to get to my goals one way or another. It's going to take me a while,
Right.
but I'm going to do it. I'm
I
going to do
love
it.
it.
That's
I
what
love
happened.
it. I love it, man. I really do. You know what? Not just for myself, because a lot of this resonates with me, and a lot of it I've spent time with those same things. But for those that are listening, those that are going to hear, those that are going to be encouraged, depending on where they are, depending on what they've gone through. I mean, you're talking about something that happened, like you said, second grade, and look at where you are now. So it's possible. And I always tell my kids, it's not about that thing. Let it go. And my son just celebrated his birthday. I said, a new you. Yesterday is gone. And I teach him that every day. I don't want him to get bogged down with the little things. Keep going. Learn from that. And understand I'm here as that bridge over that troubled water. So that leads me to ask you this. And up until a certain point, I kind of knew, I thought I knew what you would say. But who's been your number one supporter? Who's been the supporter in your life throughout all of the businesses and the this and the that? I mean, in your adult life, because I know your
Yeah.
parents, man, they poured into you something more, man. But in your adult life, who
Yeah.
who would you say inspirational, even if it's outside of your family, maybe someone you saw on YouTube or
Hmm.
something like that that inspired you to take it to that next level?
Hmm. That's an interesting question. I was going to go one way and then you made me think about it a different way. Um, hmm. This is interesting. So, um, I'll have to say this and then it's going to counter to one. So what I love about my parents actually is my parents don't care. Like a lot of people say they pick like my parents don't pick favorites. Like every time like one sibling is doing well, they'll talk about the other sibling. Like my wife is like they have to have a favorite. I'm like you don't understand my parents. Like they will just like poker face. It doesn't nothing impresses them. And the reason I say that is they don't care about any of this YouTube stuff. They don't care anything that I do. They're like, are you paying your bills? Taking care of your wife? You doing good? That's it. Like they don't care, like no matter what I do. Like, but I think that helped me ground that I can do whatever because I never have to look for them because they genuinely don't care. They don't
Mm-hmm.
even care.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just grew out a beard. My wife is like, they're gonna care. My parents like didn't even acknowledge. Like they're just like, oh, you're doing good. Like I was like, I think it looks pretty good. Anyway, the reason I say that is when it comes to looking up for like content, I don't remember any one facet. I can remember elements of who I wanted to be around different things. For example, and this is a long-winded answer, I'm sorry.
No,
But
bring it.
basically, it's elements. I've loved Star Wars. I've always loved Industrial Light and Magic, which is the ones that made it. So I was always like in my head, I want to have my own factory. I want my own place that I can do whatever I want. That's what I was able to do with Jay. Like that was one facet of my life. Gary V, I've always loved how he was just his authentic voice. He's from Jersey. He always saw like I just always liked those type of people, personalities. From TV, I think to me, I was just always, I love PTI. It's called Pardon the Interruption on ESPN. They're
Yep.
from the DMV, they're from DC. I've loved them. Michael Wilbon, like
It's
Tony
still going.
Kornheiser, I've always watched them. Still going. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that was a huge inspiration of what I wanted to do, how I wanted. That's why truthfully, I went for ESPN. And so it's a mixture of that and then this might sound very random. I read a book about Leonardo da Vinci and Albert Einstein and just all their crazy, especially da Vinci and all the things, how he was multifaceted. He was
Mm-hmm.
great at painting. It's just all these things. I look towards more of the past things. I'm like, man, if he could do this today, this is what I think he would be doing right now. I think he would do it, and that's what I want to do. And two more, and I'll stop. There is
No,
Marquez
bring it.
Brownlee. Um, Marquez is just probably the best OG. Like he started when he was 14. He's probably in his mid to late 20s now. Or Marquez, he's just done everything. Like, and I just really looked up to him. And someone said, and this is what like at the beginning of my YouTube journey, someone said like you could be Marquez for software. And I was like,
Wow.
man, like that meant something to me. And like my parents have no idea, like they don't care. Man, I'm getting emotional because they just don't know. One of my videos, they thought it was him. They're like, what is this kid doing? And it was actually my video, and they had no idea. And I was like,
Wow.
I made it. So like I made it.
You did
That's
it.
it.
You did it. You
Yep.
know, and I appreciate you, Doc, man. I appreciate you, man, willing to share
Yeah.
your stories, man. You're not only encouraging me, more importantly, you accepted the invitation, not just to talk to me, because I didn't pay you $375, and we've gone over the hour. You knew that other people would watch this, and your influence is coming through, man. And that's what really what this show is about. That's really what it's about. People ask me all the time, Daryl, willing to talk about it. Willing to talk about what? That's it. Whatever you're willing to talk about. Wherever it leads you, however we're going
Yeah,
to go,
man.
the space is there. But I love it, man. I love it. And that leads me to ask you, Doc, and I'm going to let you go, man. I promise you, because I don't want, you're probably going to send me a bill. You got my email. You send it. You're going to send me a bill. So, what are you most passionate about in life right now?
Passionate. Let me think about this. Passionate. I think I'm passionate about learning. There's this book series called, and my dad had this book. It was called How Things Work. It's this really old encyclopedia. It just teaches you random things like how things work, how zippers work, how engines work. I'm
Mm.
just passionate about learning. Um, and I say I'm passionate about I love seeing people fascinated or fanatical about something specific. And so I just love watching people be fascinated or passionate. And that's what keeps me going. As long as they're passionate, I'm like, okay, I need to learn about that. But
Mm-hmm.
those two things, I just think it's never ending and it's just surprising every single day.
That's great. You know, Doc, one day you hear this word a lot, especially where you were, where you've been. You've been in the media business. You're still in the media business, but you've been around athletes. So you hear this word get tossed around. You hear about legacy all the time. Maybe you haven't thought about it. What I'm going to ask you, either right now, even right now, if someone was to come to me and say, I say, yeah, I interviewed Doc Williams, and they say, who is that? What should I tell them? Who is Doc Williams?
Huh. That's a good question. Man, that's tough. That's tough. I'll tell you why. That's tough because I think it would just, and it seems very basic. I think it was just a guy that cared. I think that trumps anything else because if you if you care about people, people can feel that. I think people see that I care about teaching people, and I think that's why it resonates. So I think that's all it is. Other than that, I don't care about like, oh, he's interesting or like I don't care. I think it's just he cared about people. He cared about people. I think that's what I would want.
Wow. Wow. And you know, it's so funny, Doc. You could have gone a lot of places, but I feel what you're talking about, man. Because not just speaking to you now, but through your videos, you, I could feel that you wanted the person watching to know how to do that thing. even though that was a seed that you were planted. And then when you become a parent, I haven't asked you if you have kids, but as a
No
parent,
kids yet. No kids yet.
well, as a parent, you plant seeds for things that you don't know if you're going to see those things grow. And what I'm learning, Doc, as I get into this field, and you've done over 400 videos, you've planted seeds in almost up to 2 million people. You've done that. You've done that. And you're not looking for anything from them. And although you might have gotten compensated from YouTube, it is what it is. But the passion was there, the love was there, the care was there. And that's what this is about, man, at the end of the day. That's what it's about. That's what this whole conversation has been about. That's what you have alluded to throughout the conversation, through most of the questions that I've asked you. The answer has always kind of trickled back to the love and the care and the concern and the passion and the will to do it, not just for yourself, but for someone else. I think your wife called it imposter syndrome, but it was still something that someone else was benefiting from more than you in a lot of places, in a lot of instances. Even though you got compensated, the young girl that went on to the motive, she benefited more than you. And I can bet that when you were there learning that thing, learning that new technique, learning what you didn't know, in your heart, in your mind, was you need to do this for them. That's what this is about. And if you can do that consistently, this is what people need to understand. If you don't take nothing else out of this, if you can do that consistently, you will be successful. If you can consistently fulfill the needs of someone else, you will be successful. It's really just that simple. I'm 50 years old. I know I'm a little older than you, but I have come to the conclusion, and you have taught me here today, man. You really taught me. And I love this space. I love the atmosphere and the environment that you've created. Um, and people don't know. I'm going to say it, though. People don't know. I had Doc for an hour before, and I forgot to hit record. And he came back. And I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful, Doc. You mentioned earlier, and I'm going to stop. I do have one more question for you, but I'm going to stop. I mentioned to you, I heard you mention, Doc. You said whatever you doing YouTube for, whether it be this or that or your kids, that's the sole reason why I record. My kids. My kids. So they'll have something tangible. They can go listen to daddy, listen to his voice, listen to the conversations that he had, listen to Doc Williams pour out his heart, pour out his passion. They probably never meet you, but listen to what he had to say, and all of my other guests, and their enthusiasm for life, their trials and tribulations, the things that they were able to overcome. And that's what this is about for me. And I'm just getting blown away by people like you. So it leads me to ask you, Doc. It leads me to ask you this, and I'm gonna let you go because I know you're gonna send me a bill, and I'm gonna give you, I'm gonna make it, I'm gonna pay it in payments though, 3 installments, 3 installments, Doc. What would your younger self? What would you right now, your older self? What would you tell your younger self?
What would I tell my younger self? You know, this is a question. I wonder, how young am I talking to? Am I talking to myself when am I a teenager? What age am I talking to myself?
Wherever you need to bring your, whatever age you need to, it could be multiple ages where you need to bring
Yeah.
yourself to where you are now.
That's a good question. I think it would probably be Learn more patience. I think if I told myself that, it everything. Now I think I'm more patient now, but I think having that even at a younger age, it helps me. It would have helped me in different situations where I could have given myself more time, but also patience with talking to people, patience to listen to more people. I think all of those different facets, that's probably what I would have said. That's what probably I would have said. Before I think we talked about, I would have said like forgiveness or let yourself know like you're okay. But the more we're talking, I think it's time is precious. Taking a deep breath, listening to more people, being more intentional. That's what I would tell myself.
Wow. That's good stuff, Doc. That's good stuff. Any last words? Any last words about business, about life, about anything, Doc? I want to make sure, because I'm not the great person to ask questions. I'm learning too. But is anything that I asked, anything I didn't ask that you want to just even say, get off your chest? I would appreciate it.
No, I mean, all I would like to say is I think you're great at asking questions. I think this has been very enjoyable. And I just think, no, I think every day you can learn something. I just think, um, no, everything with media and technology, it's all cycles. Everything that's old is new. All those things. I know people hear that a lot, but I think a lot of times the world, that FOMO, the fear of missing out, people are really panicked. Like they have to learn about this, they have to learn about AI, they have to learn. But really, if you just look at what people need, what you need, it might seem very simple or oversimplifying. That's all you need to think about.
Mhm.
That's all you need to think about with tech or where you need to go. It can be very simple because the world just makes it, it's polarizing stuff on social media. People think that you need to do this or that. You don't have to do those things. Record yourself, have things for your memories. And I definitely think like podcasting, and that's why I think people, this is just another version of home movies. People love the home movie. That's what it is. I feel like that's what YouTube can be. So if there's somewhere to just capture that, capture voices, capture images and videos, everything else will fall into play.
Wow. That's great, man. Off of that little answer you gave me, probably about three more questions popped in my head, but I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't dare, Doc. I wouldn't dare, man. I so appreciate you, man. We definitely got to do this again, just to stay in touch, man. And I'm definitely going to continue to follow your career. Obviously, I am. Not just because I want to, because I need to. I need to. I need to learn what you've got. Keep my costs down when I call you for some stuff. Say, Doc, I'm this far, but I got a couple steps. Send me the bill.
That's okay. Yeah,
Send me
yeah.
the
Don't worry.
bill.
I'll invoice you afterwards, but it's fine. It's
Yeah.
fine.
All right, man. I appreciate you, Doc. One more thing. One more thing. I gotta ask you this question. What's next? What's
Yeah.
next for you? What's next? I promise this
Oh,
is the last question. What's next? What's next for Doc?
oh
What's
man. Well, I haven't really told a lot of people this. I mean, so what's next? So, my wife thinks this is just crazy. Basically, I'm building out two more YouTube channels. One is mainly for business. I've always been attracted to business, but like the Doc Williams channel is mainly more tech focused, to be honest. I've tried to dabble with business, but the reality is most people are there for learning very specific things. I'm doing a challenge on another channel where I'm talking about how to turn your skills into money, but it's very focused on 101 different side hustle ideas. So that's one channel. But the other one is um, I'm building out micro docs, so micro documentaries. And so I've always been a fan of just long form content. I did one that's unreleased. I'll send it to you if you haven't, if I didn't tell you about it. But it's
please?
how you break into the NBA, how you break into the NBA, but it's how do you break into the front office? So how do you work for a professional team? Um, so that I have, but there's two other documentaries that were in like pre-production. One is basically how do you actually get your film on Netflix, and that's kind of meta, but we it just so many times people just ask that question and what it takes, and randomly we've talked to people that work at Amazon Prime, and Netflix. So we're trying to make that documentary right now, and then it's long term. I'll tell you, but it's called The Psychology of Making Money,
Wow.
and that happened because I was covering the NBA in Vegas and running into all different types of people that are on the up making money, and people that have lost everything and they end up in Las Vegas. So
Wow.
that's going to take a couple years, but that's what I'm working on.
Hey, Doc, man, you got it, man. That's you right there, doctor. Doctor. Man, you pour it out, man. I mean, I love it. And it's funny. I was going to ask you about the NBA, but I didn't want to be intrusive. I was going to ask you about, how would one do that, but I didn't. I said, no, I don't want to create
Yeah.
that kind of space where, it wasn't something I asked you prior to. I'm not going to put you on the spot, even though, we could have cut it out, but I appreciate you sharing that.
No.
I'll definitely be interested in looking at those things. I mean, obviously, you got the email, attach it, send it with the bill, and we'll do everything we need to do. Installments.
I will. I will. Right after this, I'll send the NBA one. It's
I appreciate
unreleased,
it.
so you'll see it. It's the higher ups. It's a long story. I'll tell you. I mean,
Yeah,
I can tell you now, but it's basically they're looking to do a longer format for Showtime and a couple other things. So like we filmed it, they loved it. That's how I ended up started working with all these other teams, Lakers and stuff. But they're like, it's a double-edged sword. They're like, we love it, but it can't be released. So it's like it got to that point, and my wife was like, I can't believe it. I'm like, it just leads to bigger things. We got in. We got in.
right,
I don't feel bad that not, but I have it. It's
right.
all my stuff. I can send it. I just can't publicize it, but I'll send you a copy. I'll send
Yeah,
you right
definitely,
after this.
definitely. I wouldn't share it. I appreciate that, Doc, man. So, Doc, thank you again. I'll say it again. It's one thing to invite someone. It's even greater when they show up. Don't take that for granted. This brother showed up. That is important. That is important. That says a lot about him. That's important. I thank you, Doc. Thank you very much.
I'm going to show you the 7 ways to create your app for free. And if you're trying to figure out how to bring your idea to life and create an app, there's a free download to give you examples and step-by-step guide of what platform you should use to get started. So here are the 7 different platforms we're going to talk about. Number 1, Flutterflow. 2, Buildbox. 3, Canonic. 4, Node-RED. 5, Softer. 6, Tuyuto. And 7, Retool. Now, as we go through these 7, keep in mind, depending on what you're trying to create, there might be a very specific platform that works better for your use case. So let's dive in on the key features of each of the 7. Number 1, Flutterflow is a platform where you can build applications fast. Now, the main thing that I'll bring out with Flutterflow would be this is a really good choice if you're trying to create mobile applications. You're going to be submitting this to the App Store. This is the platform I would choose to get started. There are tons of different things you can be doing with different animations, push notifications, light and dark mode, chat, and the list goes on. The one thing I will note is this allows you to have a professional looking and feeling app if you're creating a mobile experience. Not only this, Flutterflow also allows you to now have a web application too. So if you're looking for something that looks great on desktop, that is possible with Flutterflow as well. But what really stands out is you can create a native app that you can submit to the App Store. And yeah, it's wonderful. Number 2, we're looking at Buildbox. If you're trying to create a mobile game, this is a great platform to get started. I think it has one of the best onboarding experiences, just hands down. And if you're trying to create a 2D or a 3D game, Buildbox stands out. The other thing I would mention with this is now they have the new AI generator. So if you're trying to figure out how to use, create different assets, pictures, all those things, you can do that with BuildBox AI as well. And just amazing some of the games that are created. And if you go on their website, they're always talking about different BuildBox games that have done really well in the Apple Store or the Google Play Store, all of those things. So it's definitely something to check out. Next, we're going to be looking at Canonic. I've been talking about Canonic for years. Look at my channel. This is such a sleeper of a platform. It allows you to create internal tools. I would say it's on the more of the low code side because you have to still understand a lot with how you structure a database, but this is a wonderful platform to get started. Not only that, if you're into APIs or things like that, that's just how two systems talk to each other. It already builds out your API documentation as well when you build out your database. It's just amazing. I could go on and on. If you want to hear more about Canonic or you're building internal tools and you like low code, let me know in the comment section down below. Now, here's a sleeper hit as well. People don't talk about them a lot. They've been out for years. Node-RED. They don't get a lot of publicity. It's just, oh my goodness. You can do so much with this. If you're trying to use something like a Raspberry Pi or you're using technology that's like physical hardware and you're looking to have different automation, you're looking to do things with Bluetooth, all of those things, Node-RED is a great platform to use. I believe this is open source as well. Don't quote me, but I'm almost 99.999%. So it's going to be free. The community is wild. I will just say Node-RED is a community. You're going to have to know some things about automation or using understanding databases just because it's low code programming, right? So it's not going to be as easy to use like Softer or Tuto or Flutterflow, but this is a really powerful platform or way to build applications. The next one we would look at is Softer. Now, Softer is a platform where you can build applications very fast. The thing that stands out with Softer for me is all the different templates and use cases that you can use with Softer. So if I'm thinking about creating a client portal, applicant tracking, inventory management, investor portal, marketplaces, project trackers, you can be doing this. Now, it's using the power of Google Sheets or Airtable. So it's using a database and then it's making it look really good. So just imagine it's building a front end for you. It's making it look really, really nice. Before going in here, I would say write down what are you trying to create? What's your goal? Because being here, you can be overwhelmed or there's so many options. So having an idea of what kind of application you want to build, what kind of idea you're trying to build, then going into Softer, that's key. Next up would be Tuto. Now, if you're trying to create an OTT platform or you're trying to create a streaming platform, look no further than Tuto. Now, there's other platforms that I've reviewed in the past. The reason I like Tuto is a couple different reasons. Number one, you can start for free. That's always great. But also, what really sets this apart is you can have something called Core by Tuto. So if you're looking to create a streaming service and you want to use Flutterflow, you can be doing that with Tuto because you get access to their API, which just means that it's two systems talking to each other. So you can use Tuto, get started, but if you want to also pair it with Flutterflow or other front end designs platforms, you can be doing this. But out of the box, Tuto is going to be great for 99% of everyone. In fact, there's a whole series of this year. I'm building out our own streaming service to show people, but also to have our own other side hustle and side business and media platform using Tuto. If you want to know more about this or if you want more videos on Tuto, let me know in the comment section down below. Next, we look at Retool. Now, Retool allows you to create internal tools as well. What I would really look at Retool is it's very, very powerful and you can just do a lot with Retool as well. So again, depending on what you're trying to build, but we have seen companies making six figures, high six figures, use this for their internal tools and use this for their workers. And they're just using Retool, app scripts, and Google Sheets, and they're building a robust application for their business. If you want to hear more about it, let me know in the comment section down below. We might do use cases or talk to different founders, but Retool, it's, I don't think it gets enough credit. And also, too, depending on what kind of business, you can ask for some of the credits to get started as well. So if you're trying to expand or go beyond the free tier, you can also look at some of the plans and some of the credits that you can be going to. Now, the next portion is we're going to be talking about pricing. Now, once again, this video, I said for free. You can start with all of these things for free. But some people say, but Doc, but this isn't free forever. Well, depending on what you're trying to create, some of these will be free if it's open source or things like that. But keep in mind, the options that you have, you can start for free. Once you start getting paying customers or start getting your audience paying, then switch over to the price tiers. So this is not a bait and switch. All of these have free tiers that we talked about, but depending on what you need, the functionality, some require payment. Now, some might say, well, I thought this was totally free. Nothing's free. Nothing's free. Even if you're using a free service, quote unquote, free service like Gmail, Google Sheets, if you're using social media like Instagram, Facebook, all those things, there's a saying, which is if you're not paying for something, you're the product, right? They're making money off of you from your data and all of these things. So when you're looking at these options, if you're trying to create a business, you're still going to have operating expenses. You're still going to do these things. But the biggest problem that I see over and over again would be people try to build apps and think they're going to make money just on ad revenue instead of trying to build a full structured business with customers that are ready to pay right now and then go from there. I'm not saying that you can't run ads and use AdMob and others on certain platforms or certain applications you want to build. That still might be a nice revenue stream, but don't bank all of your money on those things. Find your customers, find people that are willing to pay, and that goes into all of the PDF that you can download where how to pick the right tool, and we detail from idea to application how you can get started today. In the comment section down below, let me know what you're working on, and we'll see you in the next video.